Welcome. No crazy introduction, me fake reading or actually reading. Don't accuse me of fake reading. We're just gonna get to it right away. Final video. Final video of the year. Actually, well, I'll do like a mailbag video. Couple things first. One, Memorial Day. By the time you watch this, it would have been on the Monday you would have been watching this. Hopefully, you guys had a good Memorial Day. Certainly, it's one of those holidays. I'll talk about it in a mailbag video. But it's a very meaningful one. The tens of thousands of American men and women who have given up their lives in service to this country, like, is something to memorialize, something to think about on that day. So hopefully you guys did that. I would say enjoyed the time off. But kind of that's the ship we're all in right now anyway. But Memorial Day is a big deal. I think that fits well at the end of the Cold War. We talk about Reagan and Thatcher and Pope John Paul. And one of the things I can't reiterate enough is it's not just one person that ends the Cold War. Like, the Cold War ends because the contributions of tens of thousands of individuals from across the globe who believed in freedom, who believed in the ideals of Western democracy, who believed in the ideals of freedom and equality. And so it's not just one person or one group of people. Is the United States the spearhead of winning the Cold War? 100%. Can we do it without the contributions of Great Britain? No. The brave people of West Germany and West Berlin? No. Like countries like Israel, Turkey? No. And so the Cold War ends because of tens of thousands of individuals believing this was a fight worth having, and thankfully there are individuals out there like it. The Cold War ends because we had people like Truman and Eisenhower who were there at the beginning, who set the stage for long-term success. You had individuals like George Kennan who laid the foundations of why the Soviet threat was real and why we had to confront it, and we couldn't just let it keep growing. Individuals like President Kennedy. You had individuals like people we really didn't even talk about because, again, these are just videos. But John Boyd. John Boyd comes up with the idea of force multiplier, which we'll actually talk about like a lot today and stuff. You have individuals like Robin Olds, Air Force pilot, who revolutionized the way combat fighting is done in the air and has basically helped lay the foundation for U.S. air superiority since then. You have special forces teams in Vietnam, the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs. You have American politicians who begin to, or who understand what the threat truly is. You have people in the private sector, you have people in the public sector. What makes the Cold War so unique and so interesting is you even have like athletes. The 1980 Miracle on Ice is probably the most important sports event in history. It's us beating the Soviets. That it plays under like in so many different ways. Music has a big role in this. Rock and roll music, music of protest. So the Cold War really is this crazy event where it's not just one person, it's a culmination of things. But if we do have to give credit somewhere, we'll give it to President Reagan. And here's the reason. As I said before, prior to Reagan coming into office, from like 1964 up until 1980, it was a muddled set of failed U.S. policies in dealing with the Soviet Union. No one seemed to be able to really understand what the Soviet threat was. Some presidents didn't even think there was a threat, like Carter. Other presidents just didn't have the political wherewithal, like Ford, to really do anything about it. Other ones thought negotiation was the way to win. Again, there wasn't a clear understanding of what the Soviets really were, and the Soviets believed this was a zero-sum game. And in comes President Reagan. Again, domestic policy stuff aside, you can certainly agree, disagree with Reagan on domestic policy. I think it's very tough to be objective and not say that Reagan deserves a lot of credit for the end of the Cold War. So here's kind of how he sets the stage. This is how the end game plays out. When Reagan becomes president, the U.S. military is in disrepair. The country does not feel good about itself. And I think maybe the most impressive thing for me with Reagan is he makes Americans proud to be Americans. Again, he had an unyielding optimism in the American spirit, and that matters. So one of the first things he does, he basically calls a giant meeting, and he presents what's called the Reagan Doctrine. We're going to undermine the Soviets everywhere we can. Economic warfare, political warfare, wars of ideas. we're going to talk tough, and then we're going to back it up. And we're going to put the Soviets on the defensive the entire time. We're going to be the first American administration. Doesn't just say contain the Soviets. It doesn't just say roll them back. No, we're going to win. We're going to beat them. And what begins to happen is, first, it's the U.S. military. That military, what do you need? And there's a massive buildup in the U.S. military because what Reagan's banking on, and what Reagan knows is, the Soviet system is so inherently weak that they cannot keep up with our military. Technologically, they can't do it. In terms of spending, because of our economy, we can outspend them on this. Now, like, one of the misnomers is that Reagan spent like 60% of the U.S. budget on the military. No, he actually spent a relatively small size of the U.S. economy on military spending, but it was much more than the Soviets could spend because the Soviets had a fixed economic model. And that's part of it. Part of it is like the economic warfare. You want to talk about like next level brilliant. This video might be a little longer, but it's okay. What the CIA does is that, like, hey, we're not the best at necessarily one-on-one spying, but we are good at technology. The CIA realizes that one of the things the Soviets do not have a lot of is microchips and computer processors. That's an X factor. We can do things technologically they can't because of Silicon Valley. Us knowing they had to have this stuff, we began through the black market selling the Soviets purposely flawed computer chips that would actually destroy whatever they were putting them in. So, for example, there's a giant oil pipeline inside the Soviet Union. It's in his book Spy Game. Like, it's a very interesting book, but the guy's name is James Olson. He talks about how basically what they did was they created these computer microprocessors that would shoot up the pressure in these oil lines at various points in time, so the oil line could never be completed. That basically the pressure gets so great it would destroy the pipes and basically destroy that section of the oil line. And so this warfare against the Soviets was all out everywhere. One of the other things that Reagan did so well is he spoke tough to the Soviets, called them the evil empire, went to Berlin, spoke at the Brandenburg Gate, made challenges openly to the Soviets about, if you claim you're about freedom, then free these people. And they say from the Soviet sector, when they would hear this stuff, it inspired people inside the Iron Curtain. And so Reagan talked tough. He also had the credibility where the Soviets were legitimately concerned that he would actually use nuclear weapons. And this comes into the technology. I think I've said it to some people. Personal opinion, one of the biggest factors in us winning the Cold War was STEM. It was science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It was the fact that, hey, when we looked like we were losing the Cold War because of our lack of technology, like in the late 50s, and we put tons of money in engineering and science and mathematics programs. We're seeing the benefits of it today. Stealth technology, the M1 Abrams tank. Maybe the craziest thing is the SDI missile defense project. The idea that we would have a defensive shield across all the United States that could shoot down nuclear weapons from space. Could it actually work? Who knows? It didn't really matter, though, because the Soviets believed it could work. And because the Soviets believed it could work, all of a sudden the Soviets are forced with a situation they don't want to deal with. The United States can win a nuclear war. That they could actually attack first and win because they can shoot down our missiles. And it's with that where the Soviet Union begins going into this tailspin. Their economy is falling apart. They really don't know what to do. Their leadership is falling apart. And Mikhail Gorbachev becomes leader of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev is a little different than previous Soviet leaders, partly because he had no choice. The Soviet Union was so collapsing that he had to start trying to reform things some way. And he allows for something called perestroika and glasnost, where one is an opening of the economy to more free market ideas. The other one is the opening of free speech. Once you let those two things out, you can't put them back in the bottle. And so the Soviet people get a little taste of freedom and they want more. And by 1985, just 4.5 years into the Reagan administration, the cracks are showing in the Soviet system. And they're showing deep cracks. And all it takes is just a little nudge for it to go over the edge. Now, with that comes the meetings between Reagan and Gorbachev, where they begin negotiating different things, eliminating different nuclear arms, things like that. At the same time, Reagan is still talking tough. And it's crazy because out of nowhere, on November 9th, 1989, the Berlin Wall's opened. Berlin's reunited. And so the Cold War kind of ends in this odd way where it's not a battle. It's not like this great military victory. It kind of ends with like a whimper. The Soviet Union just dies. It just doesn't exist anymore. That they collapsed under the weight of their own inferior system. They lost the battle of ideas. By 1991, the Soviet Union is officially gone. They completely dismantled the Soviet Union. That's amazing. That in about 10 years, we go from thinking we're going to lose the Cold War to the Soviet Union being thrown onto the ash heap of history. Again, it's not just one thing. I didn't put an essential question in here because I think it's a good way to just kind of like end things off. That it's our technology that wins the Cold War. It's our military strength that wins the Cold War. It's great leadership when we needed it the most that wins the Cold War. It's everyday Americans winning the Cold War. Maybe ultimately, and I've read this from a lot of historians, is what ultimately wins the Cold War? It's ideas. Our ideas were just better. Our political ideas were better. Our economic ideas were better. Our military ideas were better. Our belief in freedoms, rights, organization of government were better. And at the end of the day, the Cold War was never going to be won by the Soviets because their ideas, once we realized we were actually in a fight, and once we realized they believed it was a zero-sum game, and once we finally realized that this isn't about containing, it's not about rolling back, it's about actually winning this thing, the victory was going to happen. Long-term lessons. Talk about the leadership one. That's a big one. Another long-term lesson. This is one that really applies to us today when you're talking about China and Russia and international terrorism and domestic terrorism and things like that. Confront evil. Confront evil. For too long during the Cold War, we played scared. And the second we stopped being scared, and the second we went on the offensive and attacked, maybe not militarily the way we think, but actually attacking them with the ideas and deciding finally we're going to win this thing, we do. In your lifetimes, in my lifetime, there'll be maybe not quite Cold War situations, but there'll be certainly situations in the world that call for the United States to step up. It's imperative upon us, and if there's one lesson from the Cold War we must learn, it's that to protect innocent people from really bad people and governments, sometimes you have to get involved. And if you're going to get involved, you better fight to win. I think I find the Cold War to be phenomenally interesting. I wish this could have been an in-class thing, because I had way more stuff planned for this. I actually had like 2 weeks planned for just the spying stuff, which stinks this all played out. If you're curious about more stuff, please ask. This is probably my favorite era of history to talk about. It's right up there with the military stuff. Do a question? Do one question. Do one question. This one went longer, but I kind of said that. Oh, crazy question. Would you physically fight Earl and would every neighbor support him to keep him off your property? Sophie D. I feel I'd had no choice. It's my property. There you go. Property rights. It matters. It's a John Locke thing. He gets it. So, answer the questions. Please enjoy the rest of the week. I thank you for your time in humoring me with watching these videos and stuff. Certainly not the ideal way we wanted to end your guys' year. But I appreciate the hard work you guys have put in. I've had a fun time doing these. I just wish we would have had more time together and actually the in-classroom stuff, because I think you guys would have got a lot more out of that. I think you guys would have enjoyed this a lot more, because we would have gotten the music, the sports, kind of everything with the Cold War. So I give you guys very much a Cliff Notes version, but hopefully that piques some people's interest. Thank you. Good luck. Believe in yourself. Believe in push-ups. Core strength. Be a leader. I'll catch you on the flip side.